Hey guys, I'm going to do another review for you guys on the muscle and nervous lab, which is your next exam coming up, and then I'm going to try to do one as well on chapter 10 and 11. However, and listen to this part particularly, I am going to post something on chapter 11 that's called the chart, and it's something I give students every semester. I generally write it out on the board, but it's a piece of paper that's going to give you all the functional areas of the brain and things that happen there. And it'll be probably a big matching section on your test. So that'll actually, I'll still do a review on chapter 10 and 11, but when I do, I'll say this big section here is going to be on the chart. The chart will actually constitute probably 35 to 40% of the grade of your grade on that last exam. So let's start with the lab here. Several of you have already asked me about this. And also keep in mind, the last one took over 16 hours to upload. We don't know why. The first one took probably 3 or 4, I'm guessing, but my wife left her phone on all night and it still was uploading in the morning. So we don't know. These take forever. But your lab test on the 28th and 29th, for the different classes, please don't get confused by that. Some of you take it on the 28th, some take it on the 29th, is over muscular system and nervous system. So the muscular system in the lab manual, or in the exercises rather, that are posted on Blackboard, you have a bunch of pictures for muscular system. There's actually 2 sets of pictures. One reason is because some of those can just, I guess some of them just project better. And I'll mention that as I go through this packet. But there are 2 sets of pictures. In the nervous system, you have a set of pictures, and then you have a nervous physiology lab. So I'm going to try to do that all in a timely fashion this morning. All right, muscular system, the first thing you have in that packet is a list of action terms. Now, all these are defined as they would be defined for the anatomical definition. So in other words, you might find another definition of flexion in the dictionary, but this is how we define them anatomically. On the test, when you show these, or if I show these, and I'm going to have my wife show me for a second here. For example, you might see a picture. These are actually in your text, in your PowerPoints. If you look at the end of chapter 8, I believe, or I think it's chapter 8, the chapter on joints, you will see some pictures of someone standing there doing, maybe having their arm like this, and it will have an arrow sweeping up and an arrow sweeping down. The arrow sweeping up is flexion, the arrow sweeping down is extension. Or they may be standing like this with their leg up. Sweeping up is flexion, sweeping down is extension. There are several pictures that show you these actions. That is how I will test you on your lab. Let's go back to this now. So again, on your lab, if you see the term flexion, this is giving you the definition in anatomical terms, but you will actually see a structure, not a structure, a person on there doing the action. And it will ask you name the action at A, or arrow B. And again, look those up in chapter 8, I believe it is, and the joint chapter, chapter on arthrology or joints, and it will show you those at the end of the chapter. Okay, going on, I do not have the pictures. I'm not going to show you the pictures. Those are pretty straightforward. Any muscle that is on this list, except I'm gonna mark some out for you. If I think I've already marked them out on this list, revised this list for you. But any muscle that is on here, with the exception of maybe one, you will have to label potentially on those pictures. So again, it's just like the bones. If I point to the orbicularis oculi, which you'll see on the diagram, is a circular muscle around the eye, you will name it orbicularis oculi or orbicularis oris. Over here in the actions or other, what I've always done in the past, these are bonus possibilities. So if you need a few bonus possibilities, this is an opportunity. What you don't want to do is study what I give you here more than all the other stuff, and you get the 10 bonus right and you miss the other 50 on the exam. That's kind of counterproductive. So I'm going to go through this list and give you an action of certain muscles or something under the other section. And if I tell you to know it as a possible bonus, then know it as a possible bonus. I'll give you maybe 20 things in an action or the other, and out of those 20, I will pick 10 as bonus. And one of them has 4 things to it, so if I pick it, then that's 4 out of the 10. So if you don't understand that, you can email me, but I think it'll be understandable as we go through. I'm giving you some out of each section. So under this section, I want you to know the action of the orbicularis oculi only. It closes the eye. Sometimes it's called the winking muscle. The next section, know the action of the masseter. Again, these are bonus. You do not have to know these. This is totally, by your own election to do it. You don't have to do it. It's not mandatory. Next section, know the sternocleidomastoid. And while I'm going through here, these sections, there will be nothing asked of you to classify these under their section. It's just a good way to go over them. In other words, I'm not going to say, is the sternocleidomastoid a muscle that moves the head or a muscle of mastication or chewing? You do not have to know that. We just put them in organizational units there. So again, know that the action of the sternocleidomastoid is a bonus. Next section, know the action of the trapezius and the levator scapula. Next group, know the action of the pectoralis major, pulls the arm across the chest. The deltoid abducts the arm. And then the last 4 here, the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, subscapularis, and teres minor, know that they are all part of the rotator cuff. So again, if I put that on the bonus, I will just say, name the 4 muscles of the rotator cuff. And that's 4 out of the 10 bonus. So that could be a good one. Also, put a little X by subscapularis. You do not have to identify it on a picture. Again, I've given you the pictures. They may or may not be labeled, but they are labeled in your text, and there are 2 sets of them. If you know them on one, you should be able to know them on the other. All right, next group, I want you to know the action of the biceps and the triceps, both of those. In fact, you can mark out the brachioradialis. I will not ask you that to identify it. Next section, I'm not going to ask you any actions on those. In fact, the next section, mark out the external and internal oblique and just know the rectus abdominis as to label on the picture. That'll cut it down for you a little bit. All right, next group, I want you to know the action of the psoas major, and I want you to know the action of the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and the adductor longus. And I misspelled this. This is abducts, 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 not the way it's spelled. But you're going to know all the actions except the iliacus as a potential bonus. Also, I would ask you to know what the iliopsoas is. And I don't usually give this hint, but since we're doing this online and we're not in class, these 2 muscles, the psoas major and iliacus, have the same tendon of origin. So a lot of people think they're one muscle and they call them the iliopsoas. So on the second set of diagrams, I believe, the ones that are more reddish color, you will have a little bracket out there. It will label this muscle and this muscle. Then you'll have a bracket out here, and that's actually trying to label the iliopsoas. You have the same thing in the next section. In the next section, I want you to know the sartorius. These I will give you a pass. Just know them as a group, hamstring group and quadriceps group. You do not need to know the individual muscles, but know their action for bonus. Now, on the one reason I have a second set of pictures, the first set of pictures shows you all these individual muscles and labels them, but it does not show you them as a group. So I will probably use the second set of pictures where it shows these muscles, but then they have a big bracket out here that asks you what the group name is. Hamstring group's on the back of the thigh, quadriceps on the front of the thigh. So you should see that. It is bracketed to show you all 4 of those muscles of the quadriceps group. So I will put an A at that big bracket and say, name, what is this group of muscles called, or what is this group collectively called? Okay, so that cuts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down to 2 that you just have to know the group name. This group, know the action of the tibialis anterior and the gastrocnemius. for bonus. And again, you're going to know all those muscles that I mentioned as to be able to label them as well. So if you have any questions, you can email me, but that should be pretty straightforward, but I'm just not bringing up the pictures. The nervous system, I want to show you these because they're not really labeled on here. You have a list on some. I'm going to mark some of these off. This is not something we would have in the lab, but it is something we would have, that I took a picture of at another college. I love this diagram. And what this is a multipolar neuron that's been cut. I think in chapter 5 in the tissues, I introduced this to you. If you remember, for nervous tissue, that's all I wanted you to know. I said if this slide comes up, just write down nervous. But I also showed you the parts of that, the dendrites, the cell body, and the axon are number 1, 2, 3 on your list. So what we're seeing here, and I'm going to do this by number, I think this will be easier. This whole region here, this area right here is your cell body. In the middle of that's the nucleus. It looks like a clear golf ball. Every one of these white structures that is coming into that cell body is a dendrite. There's only one that leaves it, and that's this. This is the axon, and it has been cut here. Here's the remainder of the axon. If I want to ask you the axon, I will point to this right here and say, name this structure. Or point to one of these right here and say, name this structure. These are dendrites. Axon, cell body, or soma. Again, the nucleus, the myelin sheath is, myelin, as you'll see when you read the chapter, is a fat coating around the neuron that is created by a cell called the oligodendrocyte or the Schwann cell. The oligodendrocyte produces this in the brain and cord, and the Schwann cell produces it in the peripheral nervous system, which is your cranial nerves, spinal nerves. So what we see here are like little, I've heard people say tic-tacs on a little tic-tac type sections here, but whatever you want to call them. But each part of that is a myelin sheath, and it is wrapped around at that point. In between those, you have little indentations here, and those are what we call, number 6, the nodes of Ranvier. What this does, this fat coating makes the impulse, the nerve impulse, go faster. It goes boom, boom, boom. It's almost like it's down the neuron. We call that saltatory conduction, which is not anything you know for the test. The last two on here, you can mark off. 7 and 8, mark off because we're going to show you those somewhere else. I do want to show you number 7, this gray tissue here that's over the axon with the myelin coating is called the endoneurium, but you do not have to know it on this diagram. All right, so to review, number 1, any of these is a number 1. Let me check your list to make sure here. Yes. Number 2 is this, the cell body. Number 3 is here. Number 4 is there. Number 5 is either this or this. And number 6 is either here or here. And I will probably put 2 arrows there saying, name the structure at the arrows. Okay. On this particular diagram, and I think I've already added these, yes I have. This is a cross section of a nerve, and I love this cross section because in your book, most of them show it looking down through there, right at the end of that, blunted off. This is 3-dimensional. So number 1, the axon is right here. This is labeled for you. Endoneurium covers an individual axon or fiber, and that is here. You see the myelin sheath and the endoneurium. Perineurium covers a group, and that is a group of axons, which is called a fascicle. So the fascicle number 6 is a group of those, and it is covered by perineurium. And then epineurium covers the entire nerve. And again, the myelin sheath is number 5 here. So, a good analogy for this, I think I already gave you this for some reason, but maybe I didn't. If you have an individual straw with the paper on it, that is endoneurium, representative of endoneurium. If you take a group of straws and wrap tissue paper around them, that is a example of perineurium and a fascicle. That group of fibers is a fascicle. If you take several of those packets and put them together and wrap it with tissue paper, that tissue paper would be representative of epineurium. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, the next diagram, we're kind of just going up here, is the spinal cord. And I'm going to do this by number. Let's see, I may have to go backwards here, see if I can memorize these. All right, so we have what we call horns, and we have columns in this. Columns are white, horns are gray. Now, if you don't know what that means, you'll see it in your chapter, and it will tell you that white matter, anywhere you have myelin, this fat coating, appears white in a human brain. Anywhere you have cell bodies and dendrites, in fact, let me back up here a minute. So anywhere I would see this section of the neuron is gray. Anywhere I would see axons with myelin on them is white. So, and you'll see this in the chapter, in the brain, you have white matter on the inside. In the cord, you have white matter on the outside. Vice versa for the gray matter. Gray matter is on the outside of the brain, it's on the inside of the cord. So outside of the cord is white matter, inside is gray matter. That's why we have the little dots there trying to indicate shading. Well, the white matter, and we can split this right in half, and we've drawn all this out on this side. You would have the same structures over here, we just didn't draw it on this picture. You'll have the same structures on this half of it that you do here. I'm just naming one half, with the exception of this little dot. For example, this is called the dorsal column. That's number 1 on your list. Number 1 on your list right here as well. So we have it on both sides. So this is number 1, dorsal column. This is number 2, lateral column. This is number 3, ventral column. I think the next ones are the dorsal horn is number 4, lateral horn number 5, and ventral horn number 6. And let me check my list here to make sure. Yes. The dorsal root is here. The ventral root is here. Sorry, I skipped one. Dorsal root 7, dorsal root ganglion 8, ventral root 9, spinal nerve 10, and the little dot in the center is the central spinal canal, and you'll see in the lecture that's where cerebrospinal fluid is flowing inside of the cord. So those are some of your, and again, this is certainly an imperfect presentation since we're doing this online now. I hate that I can't be there lecturing in person. That's the type of teacher I am. But the spinal nerve is called mixed, and this will correlate to your lecture notes. It is called mixed because we have sensory input coming into the spinal cord and ultimately the brain here, possibly. And the ventral root is motor. We have motor going out, so we have both sensory and motor components in that, and that's why we call those mixed nerves. All right, let's go on here with your... Now the next thing we have is the brain. And I have a pretty decent list here, but this is going to be maybe a little difficult to see. These are going to be sideways on my picture here. So hopefully you can slow this down. In fact, I cannot pull those down any either. Well, I want to start with this particular picture, and there should be a way that I can reduce the size of that, but apparently I can't. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to come back with another little review we'll post, possibly, that has this attached to it, because I just cannot present these when they're sideways. So that'll be the first part of this review, and then we'll post another one.